All right, I have one other demonstration I want to show you. It's the second one that's attached to this activity, and it's called marbling paper. I think this is one of the funnest things that you can do, and it's very easy to do with stuff at home. And it's also a lot of fun to do if you have young kids in the house or something like that that you need to keep occupied for a while. What you need is some shaving cream. This is the really basic cheap stuff. And some food coloring. I got a few different colors here. A paper plate. It does not need to be deep like this. This is actually, you can use a very shallow one, or at a pinch you can just do a squeegee effect on a piece of paper towel. A ruler, as you'll see. A 3x5 or 4x6 note card, preferably a plain one. And a toothpick. And then some paper towel to help yourself mop up. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we take the shaving cream and we shake it up. And if we look at the ingredients in shaving cream, we find that it says water, and then it says stearic acid. And stearic acid is the important part here, because stearic acid is closely related to soap. It's actually, soap molecules are essentially deprotonated stearic acid molecules, at least certain bits of soap include that. And then there's triethanolamine, which helps to foam it up, and then isobutane, because this is an aerosol can. So, but basically that stearic acid is a mixture of polar and nonpolar, and that's going to be very important. Now what we do with that foam is we fill up the paper plate. Now I find that I only have to do about half of it, and the foaming takes care of the rest. Okay? And then the ruler comes in, and you're basically going to want to squeegee out or scrape out a nice flat surface. Okay? If you've done any cake decorating, you can use that kind of technique. But basically, you just take the ruler, and it takes a couple passes to get a decent smooth surface. It doesn't have to be perfect, but smoother surfaces will behave better in the next steps. Okay, I think that's probably good enough. Okay, and it doesn't have to be necessarily all the way to the edge. It's the area in the middle that's important. Okay. The next part of the process involves the food coloring, and what you want to do is put several drops of food coloring. I find that 4 to 6 total drops works well, so I'm going to use some black. And the color choices are up to you. And if you have an idea of a picture you might have in mind, this is the time to think about where you want these drops to end up. That's red, and I'm going to do a couple of blue, and a couple of, or maybe just one of green, right? Maybe two in the center. Okay. All right. And then you take the food coloring. So what I want you to notice, though, is that the food coloring basically sits on top of the surface. Okay. The stearic acid, consisting of a polar end of a molecule and a nonpolar end of the molecule, and the nonpolar end is quite a bit larger. The nonpolar end means that this thing is not very water-loving, okay? And the food coloring, which is ionic and is dissolved in ethanol, does like water, so it just sits on the surface. And that gives you the ability to do some really kind of fun things. And so here's where your artistic talent comes into play. What you want to do is you want to take a toothpick, and you'll notice I'm holding the toothpick vertically, okay, to keep it consistent. And you just want to start moving this ink around. And it's up to you whether you want to try and draw a picture or whether you want to do a design. I like abstract art, so I tend to do patterns. And I just swirl the ink back and forth until I'm happy with what I see. And so I'm just going back and forth. And basically you have to keep in mind the note card that you're going to use. You want a picture that's or you want a design that's at least as big as the note card. That's going to work out the best. All right. And I think I'm close. I'm going to go and put a whole series of same direction streaks in here. I'll take that and put that down. Now what you do is you take your note card and you decide, where do I want to put my paper? And so you put it down. Got 2 cards here. You put the paper down and you want it to make good contact. And here's where the chromatography principle comes in, because the stearic acid is largely nonpolar, whereas the food coloring is polar, and the paper is polar. The paper consists of cellulose, of course, and so it's going to attract the moisture and the things that are polar, which includes the water that's in the shaving cream, as well as the alcohol and the dye molecules. And so I tap it down to make sure I get really good contact. In fact, I've actually pushed the paper a little bit into the foam, and I let it sit for just a little bit, and then I come in and I just grab a corner, like so. Actually, I should use my other hand. And I lift it out, and you can already start to see what's happening. But you've got this mucky layer of excess shaving cream on here. So you lay it down on your piece of paper towel, and you take the ruler and you scrape off the excess shaving cream. And what you get is something that looks like that, okay? The polar and ionic dye molecules have transferred over to the paper, and now you have a beautiful little bit of art that you can hang on your refrigerator, which will bring you peace and joy. And this is the final image that you get from the process. I hope you enjoy making one yourself.